What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to another piece of Spooky. On the Weekly, I am your host and narrator, Henrik Kuto, and thank you for joining me. We're just a little over a week away from the big day, the big Christmas, which I enjoy quite a bit. You might have gathered that by the fact that we have holiday-themed stories all month long, and this news is hot off the presses. On Christmas Day, we're going to have a special bonus episode written by none other than Shane Migliavacca. You may know him as the man behind our 2 Halloween stories, as well as many, many others. He's phenomenal, and the story is so good and so sick. But speaking of so good and so sick, we have something new we've never tried this week, and that is a double feature, 2 stories written by Morgan Moore, both involving a little bit of holiday cheer and a whole lot of holiday fear. So we're going to get to those in just a second, but I want to remind you, if you love Weekly Spooky, if you love the scary stories, we have a book out. A book written by David O'Hanlon, available right now on Amazon on Kindle and paperback, and soon to be audiobook. I'll let you guys know when that's available, because obviously you guys like listening to your stories. Go to Amazon.com and search Babysitter Massacre, Daddy's Little Killer. Get yourself a copy, and I guarantee if you like this show, then it's the kind of thing you'd like. If you like that kind of thing. And also, please head to WeeklySpooky.com, subscribe on your favorite podcast app, and grab a t-shirt or a little piece of merchandise if you're so inclined. Many people have this holiday season, and I thank you very much. But for now, it is time for the story. Babes in Terrorland by Morgan Moore. As with many holiday seasons before it, parents and children flocked to Barron's toy store in the village of Green Seas. In the middle of the crowd was Justin Barron, a 14-year-old boy with an apron featuring a hand-sewn version of the store's logo in the middle. Justin was staying with his grandmother, the owner of the store, for the holidays while his parents were away on a business trip. He was enlisted to lend a hand almost immediately upon his arrival, with it being the store's busiest time of year. Justin could never understand how she managed it all on her own, but she had been doing it ever since his grandfather died a few years ago, and was managing it successfully, somehow. Justin moved around the store as best he could, seeing how crowded the small store was and all. The building itself was an old brownstone, with the store situated on the ground floor and Mrs. Barron's home on the second. The store could become a claustrophobic nightmare when business was booming, but he managed stocking the shelves and helping out customers as best he could. By the time 3 o'clock came around, Justin was spent and was ready for the day to be over so he could finally get some rest. Those thoughts were interrupted when he laid eyes on Kathy Wilcox. He had known her since 4th grade and had a crush on her that never faded. Justin always wanted to tell her how he felt, but he could never muster up the courage to do it. Somehow he could picture everything he wanted to say, but any time he saw her, it all vanished. Justin felt himself beginning to melt as he kept looking at her. His face turned bright red, and immediately Justin began to do some busy work around the area, trying to disguise the fact that he had been staring at her. Justin's heart beat faster and faster, as if somebody was pounding away on a drum, but that came to an immediate halt when he felt a gentle tap on his shoulder. He turned around and saw Kathy there. "Hi, Justin," Kathy said sweetly. "Hi, Kathy," Justin stammered, his face feeling like it was on fire. Kathy gave him an intimate smile, her blue eyes seeming to shimmer to Justin. "Mind if I ask you a question?" Uh-oh, Justin thought. She's gonna chew me out for looking at her, and in the middle of the store, too. Everybody's gonna think I'm some perv. Sure, Justin responded after a brief pause. Could you help me and my sister real quick? What a relief, Justin thought. Oh, yeah, for sure. What do you guys need? He asked. She then began to walk away down an aisle. Justin followed close behind her. My sister found something she wants, but I can't reach it, and neither can she. I saw you and thought I'd ask if you could bring it down for me since you're so tall and all, Kathy explained. Oh, yeah, I should be able to get it for you, Justin replied with a smile. Kathy returned the smile. Man, she's so cute, Justin thought, as they kept walking beside one another. The two eventually got to their location and joined Kathy's sister, Janet. Upon seeing Justin in the apron identifying him as a store employee, Janet pointed upwards toward the top of the shelf she was standing at. That one, please, Janet asked Justin. Justin looked up to where the child pointed and saw a clown doll. The doll had been in the store ever since he could remember. It had a wooden head and hands and was dressed in a hand-sewn outfit colored silver and blue. A jester hat adorned its head, bells dangling down playfully. Justin had always thought it looked creepy, and other people must have thought the same as the doll had been around the store ever since he was a child. But maybe, finally, someone had found the doll appealing and wanted to give it a home. Justin smiled and reached up, just barely able to get the doll. He got a grip on it and brought it down, handing it gently to the little girl. Here you go, Justin said. Janet smiled as she held and stared at the doll. Kathy turned to Justin and gave him a big smile. He returned it in kind. I want him, Janet responded energetically as she held the clown doll up to the two. How much is it? Kathy asked Justin. I'm not sure. It doesn't look like it has a tag on it. Let's ask my grandma, Justin said. They arrived at the register to find Justin's grandmother smiling at the three. There you are, Justin. What cute friends you have there, she said. Kathy blushed lightly at the comment. Hey, Grandma, how much is this? There's no tag on it or even a sign on the shelf it was on. His grandmother's smile turned to a slight frown. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That doll isn't for sale. I only keep it on the shelf for decoration, she explained as sweetly as possible. But I want it, Janet told her. Are you sure you're not able to sell it? Kathy asked. Unfortunately, I am, dear. My husband made the doll many years ago for Justin's mother, and it just has too much sentimental value for me to sell it. It's been watching over the store for years, Justin's grandma explained to the three. Janet frowned, tears starting to well up. Justin smiled a little bit at the two and at his grandma. It's all right, I'll put him back, Justin said. He then made a motion with his head for Kathy and Janet to follow him. The three of them made their way back to the aisle. Janet looked utterly devastated that she couldn't have the doll, and Kathy looked equally saddened for her sister. Once they got back to the aisle, Justin put the doll back up. He then turned to Kathy with a small grin. She tilted her head in confusion. What is it? Why are you grinning like that? She asked. Because I know of a way to get that doll for Janet, he explained. Janet's face brightened up at once. Really? How? Justin moved in a bit closer to Kathy so that he could talk to her in semi-privacy. Janet frowned when she realized what was going on. My grandma is going to go out to a party tonight and I'll be alone for hours. Come on by around 8 and I'll let you in. We can get the doll then, he explained to her. But she'll notice, won't she? Kathy asked. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. Just be here by 8. Later that night, Justin made his way downstairs to the store and opened the front door to find Kathy and Janet standing there. Justin frowned a tiny bit as the two girls made their way inside. Why'd you bring your sister? He asked, doing his best to hide his disappointment that it wasn't just Kathy. She wanted to come and I couldn't get her to stay home without spilling the beans. I told my parents I was going out with friends and she threatened to tell them what I was really doing, Kathy explained. I mean, it isn't entirely untrue. You are hanging out with a friend, Justin said with a small smile. "I'm going," Janet blurted out and ran towards the aisle with the doll. "So, how are you going to explain this to your grandma?" Kathy asked as she walked past a display of a toy war scene. "Oh, I'm going to tell her I ordered a pizza and just forgot to lock the door on my way back up. I'll take some money out of the register and hide a few other toys, maybe knock some displays over and make it look like somebody broke in and robbed the place," he explained. "That's pretty clever. Mean, but clever," she responded as she stopped by the register, Justin stopping in front of her. "Hey." "What can I say?" Justin said. Kathy smiled a bit as she fiddled with some small toys by the register. She looked around, then returned her gaze to Justin. "Why are you doing this for us? Why are you risking getting into so much trouble?" His mind raced at 1,000,000 miles an hour, trying to figure out how to explain why he was so willing to help her sister out. No, help her out. Before he could give it any more thought, he blurted out his response. "It's because I like you. I've always liked you. I think you're sweet and cute, and I just wanted to help because I like you and I thought maybe you'd like me back if I did it." He gasped for breath. Justin closed his eyes and took several deep breaths, eventually regaining control of his breathing. After a few brief minutes, he opened his eyes. Finding that Kathy was staring at him, her mouth dropped open some, and her eyes wide. Dread filled Justin, his heart beating harder and harder. Oh no, she's gonna leave and never speak to me again and tell everybody I'm a loser and a freak. But she surprised him by smiling at him, warmly and widely. Justin slowly smiled back. They brought their faces close to one another, only a hair's breadth apart. The scream that ripped through the air put an end to that. "Janet!" Kathy called out and rushed toward the location the scream emanated from, Justin following in her wake. The duo arrived to find Janet, laying on the floor screaming and crying in agony, her eye sockets bleeding profusely. As for the former resident of those yawning black holes, they were in the hands of the clown doll. The toy turned its head and looked at them. Justin and Kathy bolted from the aisle, the clown doll right behind them. As they ran down the aisles, Kathy shrieked as the other toys began to spring from the shelves and joined the hunt. Stuffed bears and lions pawed at them with vicious claws that sprang from their plush paws as metal model cars pelted down on the teens like rain, leaving bruises and cuts. Justin managed to grab a baseball bat from a nearby barrel and started swinging away as Kathy grabbed a stick horse and did the same. The two sent toys flying left and right, but more and more came forth. Soon Justin and Kathy found themselves surrounded. They continued to swing away, but soon the terror toys grabbed their weapons and pulled them away, leaving the pair defenseless. Justin and Kathy looked at each other and took hold of each other's hand, ready to accept their doomed fate. The store lights came alive and bathed everything in a warm fluorescent glow, causing the pair to start. "Oh no, look at this mess," the voice of Justin's grandmother rang out. The older woman looked around at all the toys, who now looked back at her. She stopped a few feet away from the rattled teens. "Grandma, what's going on? Why are you home?" Justin spat out in a mix of confusion and anger. "And why did they attack us? And my sister, my God, Janet!" Kathy started but soon stopped as she succumbed to raw grief. The senior shook her head and sighed. "I suppose I should explain. You see, these toys, all of them, they come alive every nightfall." But why? How?" Justin demanded. "Justin, dear, your grandfather made them that way. Business hasn't been the same for years, not since that damn department store opened up. Then, when we learned your grandpa didn't have long left, he was afraid of what would happen to the store. To me, it was his opinion that without any help the store would have shut down, so he decided to create some help. Your grandfather came across a strange scroll during the war in a bombed-out toy store, a store he swore was filled with screaming, burning toys. You can guess the rest. These toys have been cleaning, stocking, and providing security, as you've seen here ever since. These wonderful toys, they're loyal and always have been, and always will be." Justin and Kathy were taken aback. They believed it all, after all. How could they not? But something still bothered them. "Oh, thank God. We're safe then," Kathy told them. The two smiled as they looked at each other, and then at Justin's grandma. But the smiles faded as they saw that the elder in front of them was grim. "Grandma?" Justin started with a shaky voice. "I'm sorry, love, but you were trespassing. You know I don't like you coming down here at night, to say nothing of your friend here and her sister. The store was closed. Besides, they don't move during the day, but they can still hear. When I left for the party, they told me about your little plan. That's why I came back early." "You mean you're going to turn us into the police?" Kathy asked. "No. Unfortunately for you two, I leave all my security matters up to them. And I believe I know what they'll do with you," she explained. The toy soldiers from the war scene filed in, aiming their guns at the teenagers. Justin and Kathy's faces displayed pure and utter terror. With that, Justin's grandmother left and made her way to the stairs. She looked over at the two again and shook her head and sighed. Then, with a flick of her wrist, she turned off the lights. A stream of sharp bangs filled the store. Would it be Christmas without, killer toys? I don't think it would be. I consider Puppet Master to be a Christmas movie, even though I don't know what month it's set in, because that's how Christmassy killer toys are to me, and I think that one was a hell of a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, but we're not done here, my friends. No. This is a Christmas double feature. We're doing all kinds of new things to celebrate the holiday this year, whether you're into Christmas or you're into Hanukkah or you're into something in between or not into anything at all. Just enjoy the celebration with me, my friends. This next story is something I want to experiment with more on the podcast. It is what I would call false crime, faux crime. It's a fictionalized true crime story narrative based loosely on a real case that happened in suburban Ohio back in the 70s, which I'll talk about a little bit more afterward. But it's chilling, it's creepy, and of course, you get to hear my newscaster voice. So please enjoy this story, my friends, and afterward I'll be back to talk at you a little bit more. But now it's time for the second story. I mean, ho, 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 ho. Oh boy. Enjoy. Santa Letters by Morgan Moore. Every year, millions of children send letters to Santa Claus expressing their wishes of what they hope will be under their tree come Christmas Day. But what if somebody used those letters for a not-so-joyful purpose? It has happened, and the following is purported to be the true account of those events. This is the case of the Circleville Santa Letter Murders. In 1978, the citizens of the small Ohio town of Circleville were beginning their Christmas season like any other, planning the December holiday while eating Thanksgiving dinner, making travel arrangements, and all the other hullabaloo that comes with the impending season. While the adults were occupied, the children of Circleville were planning as well, once more taking up the job of writing letters to inform Old St. Nicholas of their Yuletide desires. Even the local schools were caught up in the fun, setting up small deposit mailboxes for the kids to place their letters in. All was well in Circleville as December came and Christmas magic filled the air even more than it already had throughout November. Everything was peace and joy. Unfortunately, that was all about to change. In the early morning of December 7th, 10-year-old Dylan Jones was delivering papers for the Circleville Herald, like he always did. When he reached the house of Joe and April Robinson, he was about to be greeted with a horrendous sight. Jones went around back to deliver the paper as he always did when he discovered the mutilated body of 5-year-old Mary Kate Robinson, a letter to Santa Claus nailed to her forehead. The boy screamed so loud that almost the entire neighborhood was jarred awake and came rushing to the scene. Police questioned the family, friends, teachers, everybody within the small community to try to figure out any clues and leads as to who may have committed this horrible crime, but no answers emerged. Unfortunately for the town, it was not the end of this tragedy. On December 12th, around 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 8-year-old Michael Stolings was on his way to the park to meet up with a group of friends. At 2 o'clock, his friends called Michael's house and informed his parents that he had never showed up. Immediately, the Stallings phoned the police, worried about their son, the fate of the Robinson girl foremost in their minds. It wasn't long before police found Michael, much like Mary Kate Robinson, dead, with his body mutilated and a letter to Santa Claus nailed to his forehead. The next day, Sheriff Patrick O'Kyle held a press conference in which he vowed to put a stop to this chaos. Curfews were put in place to make sure children of all ages were home by 5 o'clock at night, and the youngsters were also advised to travel in groups. Soon, things looked to be improving, and a week went by without anything happening. That was soon to change. December 12th was another quiet day. Fred and Darlene Brooks headed out for a long overdue date night, leaving 15-year-old Tanya Weiskup in charge of their children. The pair returned at close to midnight to find their home bathed in darkness. Upon entering the house, the two noticed a smell they later said reminded them of rotting meat. They didn't think much of it, as they had recently been battling with raccoons getting stuck in the attic and dying. Tired and tipsy, the Brooks went to bed, assuming that their babysitter was down in the basement asleep, spending the night, as she tended to do when she had school the next day. When they awakened the following morning, the couple went downstairs to check on Tanya and see if she had indeed stayed overnight. What they discovered was nothing short of a bloodbath. Their children, John, Laura, and Victoria, were all dead, letters nailed to their foreheads. But this time, there was a chilling new twist. A limb from each child was placed under the small Christmas tree set up in the basement. As for Tanya, she lay discarded on the floor, cut from neck to groin, and left to bleed out. Later that day, the city announced a new curfew for all residents, stating everyone in town must be home and have their businesses closed by 4 p.m. Sheriff O'Kyle also advised residents take extra precautions to keep their homes locked and defended. The city became a ghost town come 4 o'clock. The chimes of clocks that rang the curfew hour ushered in eerie quiet. December 22nd and 23rd came and went with no incidents, but the town remained firmly on guard. The morning of December 24th came with no surprises as well. It was a dreary winter day, the gloom and holiday cheer mixing together like cold and warm fronts. Circleville had started to loosen up slightly, something not hard to do considering it was Christmas Eve. The curfew was still in effect, but that seemed to almost add to the magic of the holiday as families stayed bundled in together, celebrating in warm homes that stood in contrast to the cold outside. Night came and the hours drifted along. It seemed that perhaps these terrible crimes were at an end. Christmas morning came and the police who had stood guard in the city streets throughout the night started to head back to the station, ready to go home to their own families to celebrate. But before anybody could leave, a call came in. Somehow, the killer had struck again, right under their noses, twice. The first victim was 10-year-old Jackson Devins, who was found dead in his bedroom by his parents, his window pried open. At the same time, police also discovered the body of 6-year-old Addison Ferguson, who was found in a shed in her family's backyard. This sent the town over the edge into a full-blown frenzy. Who was responsible for all these deaths? How could anybody have broken into the homes and committed the crimes without being caught? Who was next? Police set up barricades to close off the town and began a city-wide manhunt, joined by the town's residents. All day they searched, and the next day, and the next. For a solid week they searched, but no leads arose, and no culprit was found. The new year came, and it seemed that, finally, there was peace. No murders had been committed since Christmas, and law enforcement officials theorized that there would be no more incidents since the season was over. On January 10th, Circleville held a citywide memorial service in honor of the victims, and has held a similar service every Christmas Eve since. These murders left many questions, all starting with who the murderer was. Upon reflection, they stated that they believed the murderer, due to the use of the letters the children wrote to Santa Claus, had to work for either the postal service or the public school. As such, the police conducted mass interviews for all post office and school employees. While everyone interviewed seemed on edge, nobody stood out as being a psychopathic killer. As the weeks rolled on, the case began to go cold. Without conclusive evidence to form any leads, the city and police made the controversial decision to stop the investigation. 1979 continued on, the tragedy still hanging over the town of Circleville like the specter of death. People slowly started to return to what they would call a normal life, with only hushed whispers of the Santa letter murders remaining. Months went by, and soon it was November. The Christmas spirit began to grow in the town once more, but it was tempered by fears of a new murder spree possibly arising. In preparation, Circleville schools announced that they would not put up letterboxes for kids this year, as a safety precaution. The post office took action as well, stating that any letters addressed to Santa Claus would go straight to the police for protection. Everything that the town could think of, they implemented, hoping to avoid another year of mayhem. December 1979 began and ended with no murders. This left everyone baffled. Why did the killer not strike again? What was it about this year compared to last to make him, or her, not lash out? Perhaps the crimes would be nothing more than a freak event, an unsolved mystery like so many others. That feeling continued into the next year, and the next, and on, and on. To this day, nobody knows who could have been behind the murders. Christmas in Circleville was never quite the same, but the years dulled the fear somewhat, and the police allowed the post office to start accepting letters to Santa Claus once more, but did not allow the school to reopen their drop box. The same question always pops up. Who did it? While law enforcement never did name a suspect or conduct any arrests, O'Kyle later said that he had a theory of the murderer's identity. He suspected that elementary school teacher Linda Morrison was the killer after discovering her dead from suicide in January of 1980. His reasoning was based on the fact that she was the one responsible for handing the letters to the post office in 1978. It was his belief that she made photocopies of the letters before delivering them. As for how she would have selected her victims, O'Kyle claimed that she did so based on which children in the school were receiving discipline for bad behavior. However, there was no concrete evidence. Perhaps it was Morrison, trying to enact a form of discipline on the children who acted out and the parents who raised their children to act as such. Though, perhaps it was a disgruntled post office employee. Maybe it was somebody else who worked at one of the schools. Some theories suggest it was O'Kyle himself or another person within law enforcement. Doubtless, no one will ever know for sure. All that is known is that the fear lingers in the cool, crisp winter air that one day, the devilish deliverer will once again return, bringing Christmas terror to Circleville. Oh my, on the show today we have a heaping helping of dead kids, and of course it makes sense though, because it's Christmas time, and the holidays are for the kids. So I hope you enjoyed those demented takes, and if you are curious, you should actually look up the actual story of the Circleville, Ohio letters. It's terrifying, and there was an Unsolved Mysteries episode about it. So, you know it's gotta be good. But I want to say thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much for subscribing, by the way, because it helps us a whole lot. I love seeing all the listeners sticking around after spooky season ended to keep the spooky going every week, no matter what time of year it is. And I think Halloween is a great spooky time, but I think Christmas is a very good spooky time. I mean, the tradition in England especially has always been to tell ghost stories on Christmas Eve. Well, because that is a tradition to tell scary stories on Christmas Eve, I want to let you all know that not only will we have another story next Wednesday, but we are going to have a story at midnight on Christmas Eve. For those of you who want to get scared as you stay up late to see if old St. Nicholas is going to eat your cookies and milk, or maybe he's going to bring you an axe. It could go either way. So be sure to tune in next week on both Wednesday and then midnight on Friday, which is, of course, nighttime Thursday night, Christmas Eve, and you will get some good scares. But before I go, I want to say huge thank you so much to our Patreon backers, and in particular, our podcast boosters. Those are people who have chosen a tier that gets them a special shout out right now, and those are Karen Weemet, Jeff Hilton, Craig Cohen, Rob Fields, and Kevin Fry. Thank you guys for helping me keep the show going, and thank you for all the people who are going to weeklyspooky.com and buying some merchandise. Thank you guys who are going to henflix.com and buying some merchandise. It all helps me have a much better holiday, and to be frank, it was looking scary there for a minute thanks to the lockdowns and losing work, but I'm really thankful because I'm having a good holiday, and I hope you are too. So until next time, I will talk at you later.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.